I don't even know what time it is. I just wear the watch cause I'm dialed in. Trying for the spot, told them try again. Money in a flock, where it's flying in. Yeah, flying in, not a fireman. But my dogs got a spot, so they pile in. Stringing me along for a while then. But I took it to the chin like a violin. Like a violin. Yeah, try to catch a wave, but I'm sorry that the ship is sailed. Walk like heavy steps, yeah, I'm tipping scales. The religious thing I act, yeah, you Christian bailed. Got God, never use them for the ticket sales. Pete the pen is so impeccable. Moving like my watch, yeah, my motion is perpetual. I keep it so professional. Asking for a minute of my time, I'm not accessible. My schedule made of metal, so I'm sorry, it ain't flexible. Only mess with me, myself, and I, is consensual. Independent legend, what I do is unconventional. And that's intentional. Managed by my wife, no commission on the checks, check the decimals. Used to tell myself I ain't really have time. Now I'm stepping on the stage like it's halftime. Must have found time, it's about time. But I don't even know what time it is. Yeah. I just wear the watch cause I'm dialed in. Trying for the spot, told them try again. Money in a flock, where it's flying in. Yeah, flying in, not a fireman. But my dogs got a spot, so they pile in. Stringing me along for a while then. But I took it to the chin like a violin. Like a violin. Try to lock us out, but we still get in. Try to sink this boat, but we still swimming. Try to rate this game, but we still winning. Around the world a couple times and we still wait. Still spinning like a windmill in a hurricane. Put the studio inside my room and I just work away. Set so many fires to my place, it's a dirt flame. Every time I open up the beat, it's an insurance claim. Left, right, they know I'm the one they try and get like. I ain't smoking nothing, I just caught a couple red eyes. Dropped 130 on it, I don't got a test drive. Ain't making it easy for the next guy. Used to tell myself I ain't really have time. Now I'm stepping on the stage like it's halftime. Must have found time, it's about time. But I don't even know what time it is. Yeah. I just wear the watch cause I'm dialed in. Trying for the spot, told them try again. Money in a flock, where it's flying in. Yeah, flying in, not a fireman. But my dogs got a spot, so they pile in. Stringing me along for a while then. But I took it to the chin like a violin. Like a violin.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome on into this week's edition of Color Commentary. I'm your host, Stephen Miller, and I am so grateful that you were taking the time to sit with us today and talk a little bit art here on a Tuesday afternoon. If you're not aware, today's a big milestone episode for us. This is episode 100 of Color Commentary, and I could not be more grateful to you, the listeners, and all of our past guests for taking the time to come out on this show and talk art damn near every week for the better part of... Wait a sec. Yeah, it's been 2+ years now, which is pretty wild. I think we're on our way to 2.5 at the moment. But 100 episodes is a huge moment for us, and I'm filled with not only gratitude for you guys, but just an overall appreciation for the space, because we've had an opportunity to speak with so many incredible artists about a lot of really huge projects that I'm not even sure if I felt like I was in a place where I was deserving of that type of ability to interview these people, right? These are artists that just kind of stand on the shoulders of giants. And because I got the opportunity to just speak with them and understand their craft a little bit deeper, it meant the world to me in the moment, and it still means the world to me today. So huge shout out to a whole bunch of them, you know, the likes of Coldy, to the Dario Lanzas of the world, to Rebecca Rose, and so many more. Like, the list literally goes on and on. I did like a total add up the other day, and we've covered, I still can't believe we're sitting here saying this, we've covered over 200 releases over the course of like 2 years. So that's like at least 2 a week across the majority of these episodes, sometimes 3. But then comes days like today where I get to do something for me, and that is sit down with an artist and deep dive not only on career, but on the project on a much deeper level. That's what I'm really stoked about with this episode today, guys. You know, I did this way back with Harvey Rayner when he was originally releasing his Chad Fugger collection over on Bitcoin. Today we get to do this with Fer Caggiano, and I'm really stoked to be able to sit down with her on this. But bring up our graphic, get our housekeeping out of the way. This is Fer. I'm going to introduce her in a little bit, tell you a little bit more about her. We'll get into her collection here in just a little bit as well. But again, this is the big celebration of 100 episodes. Never really thought we'd make it here. I thought at some point I'd get canceled for saying something stupid. Still haven't. Still kept it professional all the way through. I can't believe it. I certainly hope that over time you've come to believe it. But 100 episodes in, we have done some really, really incredible stuff, and I'm really excited to be able to spend some time and appreciate that today. Across that journey, I do want to bring one other thing up. We did release a collection back last year called Behold. Some of those pieces were held in reserve for the community, and I'm happy to tell you today, as a little bit of an incentive for you guys, if you will help repost the show and jump into the DMs and the comments on our post, tell us what some of your favorite memories from color commentary have been. I will be announcing 5 winners, and we are going to be giving away 5 pieces from Behold after today's episode. So 5 individuals will be receiving pieces from our reserve later on after today's show. Not a ton of those pieces are left, but I wanted to make sure they were set aside for this moment. So just a little way I can show appreciation on this side. But outside of that, for the remainder of our housekeeping, I want to point your attention to what we drop every single Monday. You hear me talk about it every week on this show. It's a little digest we call the Patron Age. It's a major release and major production that I put on every single week, where we cover all of the upcoming releases that are coming to the Web3 space in digital art over the course of the next 30 days. This week's edition, we covered 40 plus releases that are coming to blockchains near you, whether that's on ETH L1, Bitcoin L1, or even some of the L2s across Ethereum, and some physical releases. They can all be found in this week's edition of the Patron Age. Yes, it was All Eyes on Art. Now it lives and continues on as the Patron Age. You can find it over at thepatronage.art. But on the cover of this week's edition, you will find 3 releases. Well, actually 2. Kind of 3. The reason I say kind of 3 is you heard about a release called Classical Revival last week from Phenomena Labs. That is coming in 2 different forms. There is a physical release where you have an interactive object. That is a limited edition to 5 of those screens, or 5 or 12 of those screens. I can't remember what the final count was. Maybe it was 5 that were left over that had not yet sold. And then lastly, they also have a digital edition that is strictly digital release over on Art Blocks. You can check that out. I believe it is going to be releasing tomorrow, if memory serves. And then we have in the center of this week's headline graphic, the release we're here to talk about today, which is An Artist's Life by Fer Caggiano. And I cannot wait to dive into this with her. But you can find all 3 of those releases and so many more incredible artworks that are coming on chain this week and across the next 30 days over at thepatronage.art. And while you're there, please give us a subscribe. If you would subscribe, it costs you 0 money, but it'll keep you in the loop on all the things that are coming up across the world of digital art. So would really appreciate that. And without much further ado, guys, I think we should just dive on into it. Let me tell you about our first guest and our only guest today. My next guest has lived more creative lives than most artists could imagine. It's Fer Caggiano. After departing her fast-track corporate career in marketing and advertising, Fer has now been an artist full-time for over 25 years. Known for her vibrant, textured impasto landscapes and still lifes, Fer's practice brings joy while often highlighting the issues that she cares about most. Since entering the NFT space in 2021, she's explored every corner of Ethereum, Tezos, Shape, and Solana, but today she's here to take us inside her new body of work called An Artist's Life. So, without further ado, Fer Caggiano, welcome to Color Commentary. How are you doing today?
Hi, first of all, I wanted to say I am kind of emotional just realizing that I am your guest in your 100th episode. So this is amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, certainly. I'm stoked to have you here with us. I know I led with it a little bit ago, but like when I was thinking about how I wanted to do episode 100, there were probably 15 different ways I could have done it. And I looked back and I said, you know what? Every single thing I've done on this show has been completely nonprofit. It's been for the community. I think if I'm going to do episode 100 any one specific way, I want to do it a little bit selfishly, and let's do the format that I liked the most, that I don't do the most often, and that is something solo, something where we can really zoom in on a career that has been here for quite a while now, but is also putting out some incredible work at the same time right now today. And that's you to me. So I'm stoked to have you here. I can't wait to dive into all of this, but we left a lot of room to cover there, right? In that introduction, and kept it kind of lean. What do you think people should know about you in the background that maybe we didn't say in the intro here?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think something that actually might surprise people. I never intended to be an artist. Even though like I started painting and sketching and my first award I was only 12, but I never believed art could be something that one could make a living out of. So I went to marketing and then life just kept pushing. And every time I gave up on art, life just pushed me right back into it. So it's kind of like I can't live without being an artist. It is like it's embedded in my soul somehow. So, yes, I figure that's something interesting to start with.
Do you think that struggle is something that every artist goes through, is these kind of periods of waxing and waning of involvement? And like, is that kind of a part of the overall health that artists need to be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. And every time I hear someone saying, I'm making enough that I'm going to drop my day job and I'm going to be a full-time artist, I'm like, please, please, please stop and reconsider that for a minute because the life of an artist, to be a full-time artist, is a constant struggle. Except, of course, for the really famous people who, whatever they create, make, a small fortune that they can take care of, their children and generations after. But for the average artist, we're always trying to make something work just to be able to manage our daily bills. So, yes, I don't recommend artists to drop their day job immediately. It's something that you have to really think about. And it is true to 99.9999% of artists, I suppose.
Very, very fair. And I think that one of the things that stands out to me is like I always hear kind of that platitude of like don't quit your day job, right? That's something that is said quite often here, but to hear it said by an artist who has been here and is doing this as a daily craft, I think it's just as important, right? It's the things that aren't said here because there's a lot of different things that we find said here every single day, from the wagmies to the just focus on creating that we're going to get into in here in just a minute. But like these things end up becoming empty over time. And I think that if you can focus in on a little bit more of the harder realities, it will give you a lot longer of a timeline in this space between periods where you have to take breaks, right? So that to me is just one observation on my side of things. But I want to zoom in again and just kind of give people a little bit more background, because I think what you just gave us is a great little bit of introduction. But I think that we need to get a better idea of who exactly Farrah Caggiano is. And you've done a lot. There's no, way to kind of put a bow on all of it, but you do a great job on your website of really giving some background to it. But this gives people a little bit of context to the type of work that you have done and what they can expect from your history if they do want to go back through it in a little bit more of depth. I think one of the things that really did stand out to me is the fact that you do give a lot of time and effort back to certain causes. And I'm curious, what was one of the reasons why this project for reforestation in Brazil was so important to you across your journey as an artist?
Yeah, that is, it's a project that I still absolutely love. And I was living in South Carolina at the time, as an expat. And every now and then, I would really miss my home country. So I decided to put a collection about Brazil. So I painted the national animals and, specific locations and all of this. And then I decided to drop a physical collection. I was co-owner at a gallery at the time, and the collection was called Saudade, which means it's a Brazilian word that says you miss something really deeply and you long for that place or person. So the collection was about to launch, and there was this huge fire going on the Amazon, and we lost a lot of the Amazon at the time. It was really bad, and we know that those are bad fires in the sense that people actually set the forest on fire to make place for cattle, which is absolutely devastating if you think about the natural part of this. So I decided that I wanted to support the cause and actually, make sales and send money to a reforestation of some sort. And at the very same time, I was talking about this idea with a friend who used to be a resident at the Buddhist temple. I lived at for a couple of years, and she said, when I say like, I want to give money to a project that is working with reforestation, but I know Leonardo DiCaprio is already doing something for the Amazon, and my money is going to be so little that it doesn't help much. So I wanted to do something smaller, something that is focused. And she immediately started crying because she was actually in the process of buying land to turn into a proper reserve, and she was looking for sponsors. So she bought the land, and I said, well, I got you, like I don't have the money to pay for the land, but I can definitely pay for the trees. So she said that she only managed to move forward with the project because I was the biggest sponsor when it came into planting trees. At the time, I had, a stable financial life. I was married and I have a house rented out in Brazil. And despite the fact that I didn't actually manage to make sales to send the money, I still used several months of my oops.
Huge
Oh my
fire
God, just a
going on
second.
the
My
Amazon.
my cat decided to jump on my computer. Okay, the cat's gone. This happens, like cats. So anyway, so I decided to move all the funds from several months of my rent to support this project. And it is amazing that I actually had the opportunity to go visit the land later, and I saw all the area that they managed to plant the trees. And the video is done with a drone that I actually left to them as a gift so they could monitor the land. So anyway, like I'm very, very passionate about it. I probably carried on longer than I should to talk about it.
No, there's there's a reason that I like to zoom in on this because a good part of what I used to study when I was back in school and what I was minor course of study for me was social innovation, social entrepreneurship, and a part of that actually ties into what we're talking about here, right? And it's the idea of
Nice.
doing for collective impact, right? That's a very interesting concept to me underlying a lot of modern entrepreneurship. And the idea of art for collective impact is a really, really powerful thing that I think people don't think nearly enough about. We've seen it done a couple of times, right? Where there's a couple of releases
Yes.
out there that will have an impact undertone to it. And I think it's just something that it has the noblest of intentions, but is oftentimes overlooked. And I think we need to take the time to at least acknowledge it. And I will use this podium that we have here at Color Commentary today to encourage other artists who are tuning into this to think about that a little bit more. It's something that I think that a lot of people could
Yes.
make a lot more positive impact in the world with if they actually did consider it for just a few moments. But as we continue scrolling down your site here, I do want to bring it back around to career here. You've been seen on a number of different media outlets, right? From local
Yes.
news to the American Art Collector, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the very first time that you and I crossed paths in media was actually here on X on Spaces. And I believe we had traced that back now to like early 2024 on a show with a mutual friend of ours. And I'm curious if you were to kind of reflect back on your artistic journey the last 2 years, how has your creative frame of reference and your creative lens changed since then?
Oh my God, it changed so much. It's ridiculous. I actually wrote an article that has a funny title. It says How NFTs Ruined My Art Career, and I'm grateful. So it's one of those So the idea is that when I was working in the traditional industry, you want to make a living, so you go into that whole mindset of, you have to please the market. You have to do something that actually is going to make sales. So you see right there that painting that I'm working on was my top seller in Charleston because it's an iconic location. And back to, like being a full-time artist and having to have multiple sources of income to make a living. I used to sell prints, I used to sell merch, and that was a top seller. So I started working heavily with what would please the crowd. And when I got into NFTs, I just realized that I had a much bigger possibility of going back to actually what I wanted to create and not so much what should please the crowd. So I went from a traditional oil painter, even though like I did a whole bunch of other stuff in between, but coming from the traditional industry and going into NFTs, that's where I was at the time. Traditional oil painter, stable, selling, things like that. And then I got into NFTs and I started developing digital painting. I got into creating animations and exploring much more of my photography, which is something that people don't even know that I do photography, but I like exploring things, you know? So I went much closer into what I wanted to create and not so much what should please the crowd. And I'm very happy with that. Not that it makes sales, but I'm happy with that.
Well, again, you have to be happy with craft before you can actually continue to put it out there to people, because if people don't feel that joy,
Yeah.
they're not going to necessarily want to, let's just say, hang it in their home. So it makes plenty of sense on that side of things. But what's fascinating to me is you, within your journey as a multidisciplinary artist, you've crossed multiple mediums and you've managed to bring different aspects of those mediums into individual works, which I think is a really great jumping off point that brings us into your work that you just have debuted. Now, mind you, this is the proto version of it, right? This was the official Artist's Life concept that you put up, I believe, as an open edition on Base over on Transient
Yes.
Labs. But you wanted to bring things into the present moment off of a story that I believe was very reactionary on your part, right? So tell me a little bit about the story behind this before we get into how you managed to like blend all these different disciplines together to create this collection.
Okay, so I think this piece talks to a lot of artists because what I'm going to share is very relatable, and it's not just my experience, and that's why I got so motivated to work on this piece. When we had one of the really bad months around the market crash, I don't know if it was like 2024, 2025, I don't know, but I kept listening on and on from collectors saying, focus on your art. You know, Van Gogh never sold a painting in their lives, you know, like, and stuff like that. And they would just keep telling us that no matter what were the circumstances, we should focus on our art and forget about the market. And then that got me really, really upset. I got kind of like, you know, it's almost disrespectful, even though I know that's not what they meant. People are just trying to make sure that we didn't lose our, you know, our motivation to be creative. But really, the collectors didn't quite understand that when they were telling us that, they were telling us that our lives were not happening at the same time, kind of, you know? So I was very touched by the amount of people that seem to be struggling with the same idea. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to create a piece. And it's not going to be just a piece about what I have experienced, but I want to invite people into this conversation. So I put this first sketch and I say, this is the concept. And I'm going to put this on Transient Labs, which has some very cool features. I absolutely love their contract system. And in this one, the idea was that people would have the option that when they collected this edition, which was, I don't know, a couple of cents, I put it as low as it could go. It doesn't allow the free minting there, but it was very cheap. The idea was that people would be able to give their inputs through inscriptions. And then I would choose in the inscriptions what would make sense to be added into the concept. I had, I don't know, like 40 something mints, not all that many. To be honest, I thought more people would be interested in joining the conversation, but I think the tech got in the way as well. Not everyone is aware of how, you know, they should move forward, and they kind of like got a little confused on how to do it. I have to keep telling people, you have to go in this link now. It's not this one where you mint, and then you have to go on that one to put the inscription. It got a little complicated, but I did get some cool inputs, and I tried to add them to the final piece. So I remember one of the inputs wasn't even on inscriptions. It was from my dear friend Leslie, and she said she was always impressed on how I'm constantly innovating and I'm constantly looking into the new tools and all of this. And I was like, well, you know what? That is a very good piece of information that we should have in there. So that's one of the details that is not on this sketch, that it comes in the other one, like with all the hands saying innovation. So anyway, that was the process in there. And I think I even left this Mint open. It's more like symbolic than anything else. So if anyone wants to get into the conversation and get an addition and put a comment in there, you're all very welcome to do so, even though I already finished the final piece.
So just to kind of touch on that one small feature within this specific piece, and again, I tip my cap to Transient Labs more than I should because they're not a sponsor. Um,
Yes.
but I want to understand how you as an artist feel about attestation, because that really is the underlying feature that they've embedded here, right? The ability to allow for an audience participation or comment. Do you feel like attestation
Yes.
brings another layer to the overall relationship between collectors and artists, or do you think that it has, I don't know, a different type of benefit or detract from the actual experience of creating the work?
Well, that was one use case that I decided to go with. I don't think I've seen anyone doing this same use case for their transcriptions. And what I actually use it for in other pieces that I have minted there is the option to embed in the metadata, post something that you already minted, and say, for instance, like I have another piece in there. There is the Flamenco Queens. It was painted in a certain time and then it got exhibited later. So I added an inscription that says this piece has now been exhibited, has been part of this exhibition in Budapest, and then I added as an inscription. So it's kind of like a way to keep a diary that is on chain. So your artwork has more information. So people will use it in all the different ways, but that's, the use case that I have there is not necessarily how people use it.
Yeah, no, look, it is still a really good use case, because when I look historically back now at some of these different exhibitions that I've covered and even different works that I've seen exhibited, there was another company out there that was doing this similar type of thing, really prioritizing attestation. It was Atomic Form, and they had a really, really great system for it. But the fact that you now see this type of tech being embedded into
Mhm.
contracts or into call it new innovations on chain, like you see here over at Transient, it's always really encouraging because it means another evolution of concept, right? And people pushing the art with it. But from prototype to what it ultimately became, right, is kind of the next chapter in your story here. And that's with the release of what ended up being Meme Card 482, an artist's life that just completed its minting, I believe just an hour or two ago, over on the Memes by 6529. I guess first and foremost, congratulations on that. That's a huge, huge like accomplishment in its own right. How are you feeling post release before we get into the final product itself?
Oh my God, I'm actually like so relieved right now because first I wanted to submit this as a meme when I first did the concept. I actually sent it before the system was in the voting system. And then I relocated back to Brazil. And my life got absolutely hectic. And I didn't have time to put so much into my creative process. But I still kept on working whenever time allowed. And then there is like over a year later, and I see some friends getting, their cards minted, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. So off I went back to 6529. I started learning how the platform goes, and I submitted my piece, and then under a month it got minted. And some people wait for months before it even gets, in the top five. That's where you actually get the traction, between the top five. That's when they choose who is going to come next. So it was very tense, a very tense month, very tense being on the top five because I kept getting, pushed back and forth. But eventually I got through. I couldn't sleep for days because I would wake up and go like, where am I at right now? It's one of those things that it's impossible. My mind just wouldn't let me rest. So now that it's done, I, I think I can finally have some rest again.
I was gonna say there's a lot of different things I would love to dig into here with this piece, but like what I find most fascinating about it is how it brings together so many different elements of an artist's journey, while at the same time tapping into something that 6529's platform does exceptionally well, that I think a lot of artists along their journey they don't take advantage of. And that's a really
Hmm.
big issue to me. And that of course is trying to capture network effects, right? Being able to sit there and release work on an art discovery platform and acquire new collectors in a way that is not only organic, but that can be the start of something much bigger, right? And the start of something much bigger alludes to where we're headed. But I want to know from concept to this, what your overall feelings were of bringing together different parts of your artistic journey and your artistic life into what was at this point something that you felt you needed to capture to tell the story of the artist's life in general. And I'm sorry, my dog is a huge fan. You may hear him again.
Yeah, no, that's good. I have the cat decided to sleep by the iPad. It may actually knock the iPad over at some point again. So we're all good. Love pets. But well, as of the card, I wanted to express really what was in my heart. And I put everything I had in there. And that honest, I thought collectors were going to hate it because I thought that they were going to feel like, I was accusing of something, or I don't know, just, people can be very uh, defensive sometimes. But I knew that this would speak to artists. I knew that that was something that most artists go through. They want to talk about it, but they feel like, they can't really express this because people may just go, and take them wrong and go like, you should be just doing your art. You know? So I was surprised when I put it on the platform, and I had some actually really cool comments. One of the collectors, he said, it's actually very relatable to them as well, in the sense that we're all kind of like bound to the market. It's not just artists, like they can only collect when they're actually making money on trade, and the investments are flowing. So there's like all this pressure of people saying like you're not buying or whatever. They also feel the impacts of what's going on in the market, of course, in a different very different perspective. But it was surprising to me that it actually resonated with collectors as well.
So, with that kind of said, I'm curious if you intentionally or unintentionally have created both like an artist heaven and hell dynamic here as well, because there are the obvious foils, right, of like the thriving artist versus the starving artist. But I'm when you look at some of these other pieces that you've incorporated here that we'll look at individually in a little bit, I'm curious if you viewed it as that each of these needed to have foils in some regard, right? Obviously, you have the bull versus the bear, you have the cabal up top, you have deals to the moon, but in the bottom, I'm curious if you view any of those as direct foils to those situationally.
Oh, absolutely. Like I created this very, like for me, it was very clear that I was creating a dynamic where you have hell, which is, the bear market, and then heaven, where, is the bull is running and everything is going well. So everything that is in the bottom is kind of like the negative part of all the pressure that we have. And then I use the chart, which, has the red and the blue in the same way. So it says, the market's going well or the market's going bad, and everything reflects to all of those situations. And even the bull and bear, they could be right in the middle, but I think they belong to the top because that's when the market's actually moving. So people make money, when the graphs go up and down. It's the whole fighting is what keeps them, making money with that play. So yeah, there's like all tiny details. We could get into them as you want, and they all have a very specific meaning.
So, as I'm trying to also manage sound in the background here, I'm curious of one other element that I've noticed in this, and it goes back to the multidisciplinary fact that we were talking about earlier on. And that's the from just an observational viewpoint where I sit as a curator, as a commentator, I notice multiple formats that are at play here, right? You have everything
Mhm.
from some graffiti styling to what you've really made your career around with oil painting to also animation and in some regards glitch. And I'm curious how you felt that you've captured all of them at the same time and what other disciplines you might have brought in, but not just that, how you've managed to achieve balance here with it, because I think that you have balanced it really well.
Well, I appreciate that you see the balancing there. And when I was working on this piece, I was creating specifically to be, a meme card or something in that sense. If I was working on something that, if you look at my other collections, they will have a slightly different approach. I still do animation. I still do, like a little bit of this, layering of graffiti and splashes of paint and all of this. So I have all those elements, but the way that I balanced on this one was because I wanted to have this very specific look and feel, which gives you the idea of a meme card. First of all, it's supposed to be very you know, uh, illustrative in that sense.
Mhm.
And I used what I had as tools to create the balance of everything else. I wanted it to have like a painterly feel, and the animation, of course, because I wanted, I love the idea that we paint digitally and we can have animation. When you have like a physical painting, you can't really do animation. And I've always been trying to add something extra on the physical painting. So this is where I go with the animation. And glitch, of course, we love glitch in NFT. So had to have some of that.
I was gonna say it's really fascinating to me because you managed to bring them all together, and that's something that
Thank you.
I think a lot of artists try to do, but it's never something that they all succeed at. You need a really specific artistic approach to be able to pull something like that together, and I think it yes has something to do with the busyness of there being so many different almost like modular components to this, but it's also the fact that you've created a layered effect with dividing the card, right? There's a lot that could be said about that. There's a lot of beautiful context that you've painted into undertones through the text. I tip my cap to you on that all day long, but I want to get into these smaller pieces because as much as I could go into deeper layers of this individual artwork, we need to dive deeper into the individual pieces as they stand alone. But just because I can do so because I love 6529's platform. Um, One of the beautiful things for all the other artists who have not yet debuted work over on the memes, I wanted to point out to them that network effect that we brought up earlier before we go further into the project itself. Some of these collectors you may have already had, yes, but at the same time, by the end of this, you've got 100 collectors at least on this who have all basically jumped on board and become a collector of yours. Do you have any message that you'd like to share with those collectors and also with the artists who may be looking for their first breakout with a network effect like this?
Yes, well, first, I'm very grateful that they supported me through this. And if you see there, G Pebbles, he's being a champion to artists in the platform. He's just being truly, truly supportive. He went ahead and, minted 12 right on top, and then he still has a lot of offers. If anyone has a card and wants to sell it mint price, he's there to get it. So he's really good. Roski I never met, but I was surprised. I was very happy. I didn't see that he had four. I thought he minted three, but he must have used another account. And Thor was a sweetheart when I was going through, like getting the battle for the final position. He sent me a message and he said like, I got you. I just have to wait for this card to move, and then I'm coming full on to support your card. So there is like this kind of attitude from collectors in the platform that I'm really enjoying. Like I'm super grateful for everyone that is in there, and for artists, I just would like to remind them, which is the biggest problem with artists, and it's everywhere, is the excessive shield. So you go into a wave, you're trying to network with people, and people forget that, they're breaking into a conversation and they're just trying to self-promote, and it doesn't come across very nicely. So the only self-promotion that I kept on doing was where it was welcome, which is the memes main stage, where you keep sharing about your meme card and trying to get votes. And then, when people minted, then I send them a thank you note on DM, but I never kind of like used the space to self-promote, like, hey guys, keep minting, and going into everyone's wave and spamming my card. I think that's really bad. So guys, please don't do it. Act naturally, talk to people, engage, create connections, and then you're going to do fine.
Yeah, and also I'm going to give one little shameless plug here, as much as I tell artists privately to do this as well. If you're going to be putting a collection out there, whether it is on a platform like the Memes by 6529, or if it's just releasing a larger collection on Transient Labs, take the time to go connect, like, from a media angle,
Mhm.
right? Go on shows like Color Commentary, have conversations, show your own character, and tell the story behind your work. There's nothing more important than sharing story, and that's what this show was founded on. So I would encourage you, if you do have a collection coming up, you should take the time to go talk about it. And that's why we're actually here today, because as much as I loved the card, what really hit home for me is the fact that you broke out the different components from within this original work, took those sketches, the proto versions, and managed to create color studies out of them, and even just larger studies of how you can enhance these works and make them stand entirely on their own despite being part of a larger whole. So we've got this sorted by oldest, and I want to go through them and show what exactly we're looking at here. But would you like to go in order here from Bull and Bear down to the Cabal, or do you want to go in a different order?
Oh, any order you want. This is kind of like the order that I created the sketches and as I added them to the card. So if you want to keep this order, it actually has a flow, chronologically speaking.
Perfect. Then we'll go to the Bull and the Bear first. Um, First and foremost, explain your logic with breaking this out into 10 individual pieces that you wanted to sell as one of ones. I think people could really take something big away from that first.
Okay, I think first I have to have people understand that I'm not just an artist, even though just an artist is fine. You don't have to worry about being an artist only, but I am also a collector and I'm also a curator. And I have been collecting art since I was in art school. Like I bought paintings from my colleagues, I bought paintings from my teacher. I always appreciated art since I was very young. And in one of my trips, I lived in Spain for 6 months. I was 20 at the time, and I went to, I think it's the Prado that holds La Guernica, or maybe it's the other one. I don't remember. It's been 28 years. Oh my God, that's a lot. So I was there looking at La Guernica, Picasso's most famous masterpiece. Absolutely amazing. Every Spanish household has a print of that on the wall. So I'm watching that and in absolute awe. And then I look at the side walls, and there are all the studies that he prepared when he was creating that work. So some artists will go right in to the final piece and keep working on top of that, but some artists actually take the time to think through and make studies of what they actually want to include in the piece. So for this work, I actually had that mindset. I didn't go right for the work. I actually wanted to study the concepts that I was going to include in there. So each of those were a full piece on its own before I actually combine it all into the final piece and then make the final piece work together as a whole.
That's awesome. To just get that little bit of storytelling behind the scenes of it is it sheds a lot of light. So when you talk about the very first steps and the roots of some of these, that to me is it's an important part of this larger story that you tell in what is often seen, or what I believe may be seen as the the bigger picture, right? To use what I think everybody will relate to. They may not see the smaller things, but I think people are going to relate to smaller components in that larger work, is what I'm trying to drive at here, as much as it's a very roundabout way of saying it. So help me understand, now that we are down to this individual piece level, not only why these 10 pieces made their way into the final cut, because I think you could have brought some of the words and the
Mhm.
sayings in as like the focal points, but why this was the natural starting point for the 10 piece one of one series that you've got over on Transient right now.
Well, I am, first of all, a figurative painter. So my mind is always going for the images that are, like people or animals or something that you can relate to. So figurative can mean anything that you're actually painting that is, a body of work on its own. And so those elements are things that I actually worked on before getting to the piece. Now, all the writing and all of that, if you look at the behind the scenes video of the final piece, which I have on my website, you will see that all the drawings for the words changed a lot. So I start with something and then I change for something else. And then because those were kind of like the glue to combine the whole work together. So those elements that are in there, the 10 studies are the, let's say, the main players in the image. And then everything else that isn't a study on its own is the glue that makes it all stick together. So I think, I don't know, that makes sense to you?
No, it does make sense. I wish that the platform would let me show the video, but I think that I'm probably being metered a little bit here because I've got a lot of windows open. Um, so that aside, it's one of the four pieces here, and I think that's another really important thing. We talked about inscriptions, right, on the original
Hmm.
proto version that you released. One of the cool things that Transient offers within their broader package and their NFT suite is the opportunity to put multiple pieces onto an individual NFT, right? It's I believe their 2170 contract, or sorry, 7160 is what they call it, and it basically allows you to give the collector the ability to select which piece they want to display. So among that, one of the pieces that you've included on every single one of these 101s is the behind the scenes making of, which I think is awesome and is something we have not seen a lot of. I wish we had that transparency from a lot more artists, but
Hmm.
outside of that, you have the black and white, and you also have two different color study examples of what this piece could have been or what it has eventually become. I'm going to try to bring them a little bit more central here, as long as my browser will let me. But explain to me why approaching this from the angle of a color study after you focused in on these figures became the clear go-to for you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk now as a collector.
Okay.
And you know how I used to run spaces and I used to interview people.
Hmm.
I'm always fascinated by how people come into a final work. So I want to know what tools they used. I want to know what was the thought behind it. I want to know if it was completely, like just happened or if they actually planned. So I love understanding what goes on behind the whole story when an artist creates something. So when I try to put my work out there, I want to have that clarity to collectors. I actually had a collector back in 2021, 2022. I don't know. He bought two of my whole collections, everything that was on secondary, and he asked me to mint the BTS videos because I would send him and I said, like, look, this is, I know you love to know how the piece came to be. So here's a video. So he asked me to meet them. And I was like, well, this is actually nice to have the behind the scenes also minted. So I absolutely love on the, on this multi-C contract that you have multiple creations in the same contract. So I went with the process of how I created those pieces. So first, I wanted to have, the main idea, the sketch, the black and white. It's very raw, and some people actually love the raw sketches. And so that's why it's the first one, because it's how I started, and I want people to be able to have that as the pin artwork if that's what they choose. And then I go into a simple color study just to see, am I going to go with this, like, bright colors or dark, or how am I going to approach this? So I put like a very plain layer of colors just to see the direction that I'm going. And then there is the more elaborate sketch, which is where I refine the details and I go into, like more shading, and it has the art as I actually transported into the main piece. So that's the story behind the processes and the steps that I have in each of those artworks.
Now, just a funny observation: when you're looking at the control panel, right, of looking at all four of the things that you've put into this individual NFT, you can't make out the contrast factor of the background color for the bull and the
Yeah.
bear, which I find really funny. So, like, when you open this up and you see the difference between this piece, the refined version, and the color study, it's like so apparent how you've managed to refine it and level it up. I said enhanced earlier. I certainly should have been more accurate and just gone with refined, but it's interesting to be able to see it all at once. But as we kind of go back here into our next piece, I need to like take pause for a second here, because this is, it almost mirrors like the hero's journey in a way, right? Where you start to see these, it being a circular pattern that moves very, very clearly, of telling how an artist can rise and at the same time fall and have these moments of waxing and waning. But the next piece in the flow is the starving artist. So tell us a little bit about this and how you approached the piece itself. And then I will, while you're telling us that, I'll take us through the color study and the refinement.
Okay. So this could as well have been the first piece because this is the key motivation for the whole artwork. But I went with the bull and bear just because that's the story behind it. It's how the market influences us. But the true difficulty of an artist's life is being able to survive. And I remember just even as what I used to call a successful artist, I used to have sales and I co-owned a gallery. I was doing great. But then I had a month that was really hard, and one of my clients, she came and she bought a piece, and I remember telling her, and I was like, "Oh my God, you just saved my month, like this piece just covered the bills that I didn't know what to do about." And she looked at me and she said like, "Oh, but you should be the starving artist. That's the whole story of artists. You're always starving and you do this because you are passionate about, and it had nothing to do with making money." And I looked at her and I was like, this is so freaking messed up because people expect artists to be the freaking starving artists. It's like we don't deserve to get paid. And then, people would go like, "Oh, but you charge a fortune for this." And I say, have you considered my expenses to make this happen? And I'm giving you a piece of art that can last your life. So it's not a product that you're going to use and then it's done. So people have a hard time understanding the value. And that's why most artists are starving artists because people don't appreciate us the way that we should be appreciated. So this piece is everything that people told me, focus on your art. Van Gogh never sold a painting in his lifetime. And then, the bills are coming. How are you going to pay the rent? I'm going to take care of my kids. Like there's all the other elements that is the pressure of how do we keep moving when we have all of that happening in our lives. So, yes, this is probably the most emotional piece of the series.
Yeah, I mean, especially because you've managed to bring in something very personal as well to it, which, at least from where I sit, is kind of the self portrait of you and your son,
Yes.
right? That on
Yes.
its own, like it very much doesn't need to sell per se, but it sells the effect further that like this is something that you've lived, that you've felt, and that has affected your family, and that is something that people need to understand and wrap their heads around when they look at the larger story here. So
Yes.
again, love the work and the story that's being told there. Really wish this would just stay sorted by oldest, um, so I'm not having to flip around like crazy. But that then brings the frame of reference shifted over to the thriving artist. Now,
Yes.
just because I didn't say it up front, I probably should. All of these pieces are now available over on Transient Labs. You can go find them there. Just search for Fair Caggiano, and you can find the actual project itself. It bears the same exact title as the piece that was over on the memes. Um, An Artist's Life, that's the collection title. But you can see all the one of ones. You can explore them there, and the starting price or the reserve price to bid is 0.06529. I believe it has something to do with the memes by 6529, but I may be mistaken. Just kidding. But please do go support the project because it is a really, really great project. We're now on to the thriving artist. Maybe it is right that I actually
Yeah.
put the plug in to go and bid there, as we go into the thriving artist. That's hindsight's
Love it.
2020. But tell me a little bit about this piece then, and why this was approached the way that you did.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, you can see in this one that I have the we're gonna make it, we got this, and this is the way, all those things that were the, positive and sometimes even toxic positivity that we see a lot around. But and that goes back to when you say like I have the figures, but the writings are not actual studies on themselves. It's because in the beginning they're all part of that. They're the environment around it. So when I move the figures, then the wording just kind of like shifted around. So that's why it is on the study. But when you go to the final piece, it's located a little bit differently. So in this one, you have the mom kind of like you could tell that it's either wings, because she's the angel taking care of her kid, or sometimes it may look like a cape because it's like you have to be a superhero at times, So and the crown, because at the end of the day, I think we're all, heroes and royalty in that sense that we're managing to just take care of our own universe and our own realm. And so the thriving artist has all those elements as something, like you have attained a level of nobility. Is that even a word? You're noble, you're, royalty. And it's just, everything's kind of like in the positive sense of, you have your universe kind of like going as you want it to go, and the kid's happy. The kid's just like, I know, mom, you got this. So, yeah, that's this one.
It's always really fun to get into what like the peripheral features the work are to the artist versus what the collector sees. The second that you said the cape and the wings, I immediately was like, I completely see it, understand it, but I still sit with what I originally thought that you were impressing upon there, which was like the idea of like the wind at your back. I saw that
Nice.
immediately, but I think it's really, really interesting to always have those little contrasting moments. But when you get into the refined version of it that made its way into the final work, provided that it loads, there we go. Um, I think that the idea of the wind, the cape, the wings, it needed to be not contrasted, but like obfuscated by the paint splatter the way that you put it. And I really, really enjoy the way that you brought that in there, because getting to success and getting to the point of being a thriving artist is not a clean process. It's messy. And I think that's the message
Yeah.
that you're probably intentionally embedding there, but I'm curious if there was something more to it that you wanted people to take away from that.
No, I think you got it all. And I love how people interpret things slightly different or sometimes completely different from what we actually intended. But I also believe in when we're creating, some things come spontaneously and they are intuitive and not necessarily well thought of, but they come out as a final result with something that's really meaningful. So I love the splatters, and I always add some of those in my art because I come from the traditional industry, and that's how I used to paint. It was always very messy. So when I work digitally, I feel like it's missing that mess. So I always add to it. So that's the reason why I have it there. But I think it makes perfect sense the way you put it because it is the path. It's very messy and it's very it's very colorful in the same thing in the same
Yeah,
time.
it's process. It is a
Yes.
much larger journey to getting to an end result. Now, again, just trying to be respectful of time. I know we've just hit the hour mark. I am going to jump around here a little bit because I want
Mm-hmm.
to be able to show everything, but at the same time, what I DM'd you about when I first reached out about this, I'm going to act a little selfishly. You have to understand, it's the 100th episode. I have to. Um, as much as we could get into symbols like to the moon, whale, and shill, I wanted to
Yeah.
click into the puppet
Very, very
artist.
self-explanatory.
Yeah, I wanted to click into the puppet artist because yes, it's the piece that made the cover of the Patronage this week, but it's also the piece that I think has um, the most ways of being interpreted amongst the
Yes.
entire lot. And I'm curious if there were specific stories or specific inspirations that pushed you to make the puppet artist and how it fit into the larger story.
Yes. Well, the puppet artist, when I first started designing it, it had to do with the beginning of our conversation where it heads into what artists create, if it's based on what they want to create, or if it's dictated by the market and what people tell them that they should be doing. So that is the main concept behind this one, because I think, we are always when you look into that being placed in the hell part of the card, it has that bad tone to it, because people manipulate us either by telling us what to do or actually choosing an artist to be their trading coin, because that
Yeah.
happens as well. It has nothing to do with the art. It has to do with, let's pump this artist, let's manipulate the market and make money out of this. So it can be seen in so many ways. And it goes back to that idea that the artist starts with a concept and sometimes it develops and it opens up to so many other possibilities that are with it. So I'd love to know what you see in this.
No, I mean like it's funny because to me I like to microanalyze. So I'll dive in and I'll
Yes.
I'll come up with as many potential avenues and story that it could actually be. And the one that you didn't say that I'm not sure if like I'm glad that you didn't say that it was part of the driving inspiration for you or not. It really could go either way, but I was really taken for a moment with the idea that this could also be commentary on the artist's experience with commissioned work. And I'm curious if that
Oh.
at all played into you or if you have a view on it outside of this individual work, like that you would say from your own experience of like what you believe is beneficial or not so beneficial about artists taking on commissioned work.
Wow, that's a very interesting thought because it wasn't what drove me to do this. And believe it or not, I love working for commissions. When, I was a muralist painter for a while, and people would say, I want something that will bring me this or that vibe. I want to, have a, restaurant with this idea or a baby room or whatever, So I would love doing that as a muralist painter. And when I went to the US last time, when I was in South Carolina, I got to do a lot of commission work, and it's always challenging because the first thing that I would tell people is that you have to forget everything that is in your head because there is no way in the universe I'm going to match it. I'm not in your head. So I would tell people to give me references of things they like and tell me what they want to feel when they look at it or what they're expecting. And then I would tell them to throw away all the expectations and let me do my work. So I only had, in all the commissions that I did, two people that asked me to redo it. And in both cases were because they didn't brief me well. One wanted an abstract painting, and they didn't tell me that. So I went with a figurative work, but then I redid it and they were super happy. So anyway, it is something that is different. Like I love doing commission work, but most artists don't, and they will take it just because they need the money. But then they don't put their heart in there because they're doing it for the money. So it is an interesting, very interesting topic. I'm not sure if I covered what
No, you
you
you nailed
wanted.
it. Like again, to me, it was just that one curiosity of understanding like
Yeah.
what your feelings are on that matter, because I think that it is one different avenue that a viewer could go down and wonder if that was, where your head was at. I loved hearing the actual inspiration behind it. Like to me, that's everything. I like to understand that, especially when it comes to figurative work. But I just wanted to explore that one little diversion, almost selfishly, because it's something that when you think about the way that artists move through this space, commission is something they oftentimes will run into if they don't run into it pretty much out the gate. It's something that is all too
Yeah.
common, and they all handle it differently. So I love the way that you kind of went about the answer on that. So thank you for that and giving us a little bit of insight there. Deals is the next one I wanted to go on to. Yes, maybe a little bit because, and I'm going to call somebody out on this because he's a friend of mine and I want to call him out, and hopefully he'll see this and he'll see me. He'll understand. Um, I jokingly want to ask, so why is Patrick Amadon in this? But that's just for
That's
you.
too good.
That's just for you, Patrick. But when you look at the actual work, I want you to tell us your motivations behind this, because it is one of the pieces where it's really really clear how like the symbols that you bring around the central figures end up being the thing that tells a much bigger story than you're really just telling
Yeah.
from the point of sketch here. So walk me through Deals and why you approached it the way you did.
I'll get to that in a second, but I just have to say, shout out to Patrick. I interviewed him in one of the spaces back, I don't know how many years ago, and we disagreed in absolutely everything that we talked about. It was a very intense spaces, but it was also very good because it wasn't like a fight. It was like we were really like putting information and debating about it and
Mhm.
where we could go with that. And he was the first person who brought me the idea that blockchain is a medium. And I was like, wow, this is really, really cool because, and that's what I do now. I use the blockchain as a medium, as you saw, with transcriptions and, whatever tools that we can have. So, shout out to Patrick because, he was inspiring that day, even though I think we still disagree with a lot of stuff, but I admire him in other levels. But anyway, back to the deals. So it's not supposed to be one of his works, and I actually was gifted one. He sent me one. I won in I don't know. He was giving away a few, and I got one. Love it. It's in my vault, not selling. And this one is just because when things are being done in a shady way, people don't show their faces. So there's the hoodie, there's the cap. So it's kind of like people don't want to be out in the open about what they're doing. So that's why they're dressed like that. And the whole idea behind this is, I think it's very clear. Everyone knows that people make deals to pump their own value. And I came across that early in 2021. I was in a group of artists, and some of them, they were selling like hotcakes. And one of the girls, she was actually very experienced in trade. And she said, whenever my price goes down, I swipe the floor. I buy them all and I pump them back up. So she manipulated the market like this. And it is like back in the day, whatever people minted, the investors would buy just to trade. It had nothing to do with the art. So I understand why she was doing that. But then I started learning how people would send each other money and get them to bid into their work just so they would start showing on the trending auctions on Foundation or Super Rare, whatever, So it's a fake manipulation of the market. And I think it's very sad, honestly. Like I don't like I don't like this, but it is done widely. We have seen it. I have seen a lot of people doing this, and I personally have experienced people asking me to do that. So I had to add there. Not as a criticism, because that's how people choose to navigate, but as a fact of something that I observe that happens a lot in the community.
So just to push back on that for 2 quick seconds here, because there were two, maybe three examples that you had pointed out there where it could be seen as a manipulation. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you view, not if you view, because you already expressed that it is a manipulation in one way, but couldn't it be viewed the opposite way, that it's not necessarily a market manipulation to go and sweep your own floor on a collection, not for the sake of price, but to back up your own like estate as an artist, for then being able to sell it
Yes.
down the line in the future? Where would the line be between those two situations for you?
I think, for instance, I have some art that I did free mints as a gift to the community. One was on Tezos and one was on ETH. And especially on Tezos, people
Mhm.
just trade really cheap to make like 2 cents. It's ridiculous. So I gave a free mint. People could mint 10 or 20 artworks or something, and people keep putting them on secondary for like 3 cents. And I'm like, honestly, guys, this is ridiculous. So I go by and I gift it to people just because I think I think it's kind of like rude, you know? And it's disrespectful to the people that actually pay something for your work. So I do that in a way to respect my collectors, but only on those cases they're like super cheap. And I'm like, this is ugly. So I'm going to get rid of those 2 cent, release things. But it's not like I never did the whole manipulation of buying my own floor to pump it up. But I'm not saying that it's wrong. I think there are situations where it's good, like you're show respect to the people who actually keep backing up your work. And some people are throwing it down the gutter. So you clean that up to keep their value holding. So there are situations and situations like everything in life.
Yeah, no, I definitely get where you're coming from there, and I appreciate the little bit of more in depth coverage on, call it the logic or the challenges with it, because as much as
Yeah.
we do have a lot of collectors that are in the audience, both in listening to the recording and here live with us right now, that are collectors, we do have just as much of a balance with artists as well. So I think that hearing
Yeah.
both sides of this is something that can be very beneficial, and I think that people need to consider that a little bit more often. Um, but certainly not Patrick Hammond, considering he's in the work itself. Um, I'm sorry, and just for the record, because I want to make sure that everybody understands this. I'm not saying that Amadon is the one that's in the hoodie. I'm saying that if you ever have met Patrick at an event, he always comes wearing a black like shirt, like long sleeve t-shirt, or a hoodie with the hood down, but with a black cap on. That is literally his attire. It's the only way I've ever seen him. So I can't help but laugh at that. I think it's really really funny, just how that kind of came together. But thank you for taking us into that a little bit deeper on deals. A lot of strong considerations to be made there. I wanted to get into the last piece that I think we're gonna have time to cover today is a natural one. Is the cabal, before we get into the real story behind it, is the cabal to you more of a mythos piece of the puzzle for what we deal with here in digital art and Web3, or is this something that really you feel carries gravity and has weight to their actions if they are a they?
Okay, so I think it's not necessary that I say if I believe there is a cabal or if I believe it's a myth, because it's more like this is representing the whole, manipulation of things that it's not necessarily a set group of people, but it does happen, excuse me, in all of those small groups. There's always some people who are dictating who is going next and, who are we going to back and, who are we going to trash? All of that happens anywhere in life, whether it's at school, you have the punks at school that just don't let anyone else be happy. But anyway, so this is a representation of how there are forces manipulating the market. They could be people, or they could be a bunch of people in other levels. Anything you want to see in there could be could be up to you.
I got you. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that we almost have created the lore and the myth behind the cabal more than they actually are there. And I'm not suggesting for a second there aren't unseen forces, right? There are certainly unseen forces in this market, but I think to give power to an unclear group is not going
Hmm.
to do anybody any favors, and it's also not
Yes.
going to do anything other than make excuses for people. But that's my own view on the cabal. That will hopefully not get me canceled. But when I think about the way that you've actually gone about this work, I think that it does paint the right picture because the shadowiness of it in the figures themselves and the ambiguity of it, it almost looms like its own type of invisible hand. So I
Yes.
think that you nailed this one without a doubt. But it almost to me seems like it's the capstone on the collection. Would you say that this is
Yeah.
kind of the piece that brings it all together at the end, or is there something else that this piece is really doing when you think of it in its place in the larger work?
Well, it's funny, like this was the last piece that I worked on, and I debated a lot whether I should put it in there or not. I thought I was going to get canceled by having that on my meme card, and I can't tell if people didn't see it or if they chose to think that that was, an understanding of what exactly I explained. There are forces out there, and everyone knows about it. So whatever, it's part of the whole the whole scenario. But I did struggle internally a lot whether I should edit or not. And I decided to go with my guts and say, like I'm pouring my heart on this. I want to express as much as what I perceive as the artist's perspective of the whole network. It's not something that is supposed to be only my perspective. Like even like when you look at the single mom in there, that's my life, but it's representative of everyone suffering a lot of pressure, taking care of their loved ones. It can be their parents, it can be, like their family, it can be their pets or whatever, like their selves, it's just, there's a lot of things that they need to take care of. So the same way that that's representative of me, I wanted to add elements that I know people worry about. I know people talk about. I know it's something that is always in the conversations, whether it's real or not. So I wanted it to be a part of this piece. So that's why it's there. I hope people don't cancel me either.
They're not going to cancel you, but if I wanted to give them a reason to cancel me, I'll give them the reason here. The reason that I think that this works the way that it does is because of the ambiguity of it. You didn't stretch this to the point where you put, I don't know, a colored beard on one of them, or
Yeah.
an N95 mask that may or may not be on a punk. You didn't put one of their hands in the air like this. None of that happened, right? You didn't call out
Nah.
individuals. And yes, I am deliberately trying to stir the pot there by giving examples, but you didn't do what I just did. So don't cancel Fair, cancel me is what I'm trying to say. No, but like it really did have a big payoff when you look at what I brought up, where it fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm curious if when you take all of these different symbols into effect and you do see the point of the actual thriving artist come into perspective, does something like a sellout actually exist as a positive connotation in the work, or could it be seen as more of a critique of the thriving artist that they have sold out themselves?
Wow, I didn't think of that. I was thinking more in the I made this piece based on market and how people tell us not to worry about the market. So this is all based, on sales and no sales. So when you talk about sold out in that sense, I was going for, the artists actually everything that they put out there gets taken and not necessarily their soul is intact. They
Mhm.
could be they could be getting, like into the whole manipulation of everything, but it is the idea of the artist being able to make money. So that's what I put in there. But when you see, all the other things happening there, that's what we see on a market where people make sales. Most of those elements seem to be present, whether it's, manipulation or deals on the side. It's very rare, unfortunately, that I see an artist get a sold out collection purely based on merit of their art. And it is something I would like to see more. Really, really would like to see more. As an artist and as a collector, when I actually had the money to put in the market, I collected so much. Like if you look into my wallets, it's insane. And I have zero liquidity because I bought art for the art and for what the artist was putting there. It had nothing to do with, if the I can sell it on secondary if I need the money, because it's not like I could do that right now, like if I had some good stuff that I could sell on secondary, but nothing in my collection has liquidity. It's all about the art.
And see, there at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that is a good thing. When it goes back to the why behind the whole sellout of it all, and why I ask that question the way that I do is because as much as you approach this work the way that you did and looking at a life cycle and looking at it from the bullish and the bearish angle of the market and market forces, I want to take it back to the hero's journey element of it all, because that to me is this ending point of that actual artist journey, where when you get to the blow off top or you get to a really incredible apex for an artist and they hit that
Mhm.
moment of true wagme, right? You have made it. Oftentimes it's the idea that starts circulating that you as an artist have sold out yourself that ends up throwing you back into a bearish sentiment that makes you go through that entire process again. That's why I say it the way that I do. So as much as it can be seen as a positive, it can also be seen as the end of that journey and throwing you back into um, a new journey of all of its own. Do you feel like you've lived that journey across the time that
Oh,
you've spent as an artist? And if so, like, do you feel like you're at what point in that journey are you at right now as this collection has officially released?
it's funny because like I have done the full journey. I have been very successful. I had a two-story museum dedicated to my art at one point. I have accomplished more than 90% of the artists I know, except some people that, like I've been in touch with that are extraordinary and they keep doing it. It's amazing. But I've done that journey and it doesn't last necessarily. So, and that's why it's what you said makes a lot of sense to me. Like it's a journey. You go from nothing and then you have it all, and then you go to nothing again, and then it's a cycle, and it is what I actually told artists several times when they say they wanted to be a full-time artist, I say, like, you have to understand there is no stability in the life of an artist, and you have to learn how to save for the difficult times, because it's not going to keep coming always. And then you get the money and you go like, okay, I have the money, I'm going to spend it all because it's going to keep coming more. No, not necessarily, like, take care of your future. Put some money on savings and make sure that when the journey is in the low point, you can actually make it through and get back to the high point. So yeah, it's a cycle. I've done it all.
Well, look, I appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing not just that, but this entire story and your own history with us today on the show. The collection itself is incredible. It's an artist's life. You can find it now over on Transient. These auctions are all open. Starting bids are 0.06529. There are 10 works in all. I cannot encourage people enough to go take a look at this one because it is really, really, really special. And I'm so appreciative that you took the time to take us through it today in depth, Fair. So before we do go and we get into our wrap up today, is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with, both, for the future of what may be coming for you, or also what may have yet to have been said about the collection that you want to make sure is still said here today?
Well, I just wanted to show appreciation to everyone that has supported me, the show, like, it's very nice that people take the time to actually listen to other people. And I know, like, I took a lot of time on spaces, like I used to host twice a week, and it was very nice to be able to help people. So most of the time I'm interviewing other people and I'm helping them get through whatever they have questions about. So it's been very nice to actually be on the other side and be the one, being interviewed. So I appreciate that very much. And it would mean the world to get beats on this because I have put a lot in that, and it would mean so much just to see people appreciating the value more than anything else. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on today, Fair. Again, Fair Caggiano, this has been an absolute treat. Please do stick around in the green room. I'll be back with you in a little bit. I'm going to do our wrap up today, but it was an absolute pleasure getting the chance to sit with you on this one. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, guys, again, the collection is an artist's life. You can find it over on Transient right now. It's an incredible, incredible body of work, a very flexible contract, so you can go and pick which pieces you want to actually display at any given moment. You can change. It's not something you lock in once and it's set forever. It's the beauty behind the 7160 contract that Transient offers. But it's an incredible body of work that tells a really, really relatable story for a lot of the people in our community. So please go take a look at it. If one of them resonates, make a bid, play along. But just go appreciate the work, because I think that there was a ton that went into this one, and I commend Fair for all she threw, not only into the collection just from time and effort, but of herself, because there's a lot that can be said of an individual's journey within this larger body of work. So hats off to her. We are going to wrap up today's show with just a couple of housekeeping reminders and a couple of final little calls to action. So stick with us for just a few here. I'm going to bring our screen share back up and just pop up a couple of final reminders for folks. Again, if you've not yet checked out this week's edition of the Patronage, you can find it right here. It's over on the patronage.art. It's the very first article that you'll find on the site. You can also sign up and subscribe to the newsletter for free. That way it comes to you every single Monday when it releases, or you can just find it over on my X. It's always in a pinned post there. But in our headlining graphic this week, like you just heard about, you have An Artist's Life by Fair Caggiano, and you have Classical Revival by Phenomenal Labs, along with 38 plus more upcoming releases that are coming up over the course of the next 30 days. Just an observation for you as we near the end of today's episode, that number is up. Okay. We're in the middle part of April. Oftentimes summer sees a drop off. I spoke to this in a contribution that I wrote for the 24 Hours of Art year-end annual report that Roger Dickerman released earlier this year. I think that this is starting to correlate a little bit more with the traditional market, that we're starting to see certain upticks before we see things taper off for the summer months. So not entirely surprising to me to see that things are ticking up, but it is an indicator, in my opinion, of broader market health that we are starting to see those alignments take place. So do take a look. There again, while I feature 3 works in our headlining graphic this week, is not to suggest that I couldn't include a lot more. A lot of really incredible work is making its debut this week, and you can find all of it here on the Patronage. So go check it out. Each individual release is demarcated in purple if it's on Ethereum, or you get it in orange if it's on Bitcoin. And all the details are there for you on each of these respective drops, including some minor curatorial statements that I write to kind of give you some additional context on each of the releases themselves. Yes, it takes a lot of time. Yes, it's labor of love, but God damn it, I'm going to keep doing it for the artists because I care. At the end of the day, guys, all of this is free. So please feel free to go subscribe. It's a great way to support what I do. I'm not taking a dime away from the artists. I'm not taking a dime away from you. If I decide to ever bring on a sponsor, I may take a dime away from a sponsor, but that's the only income that's ever going to be coming from this. So please do continue to support these artists. Their work is the focal point. That's what I want to continue to bring this all back around to. But again, got to give my hat off to Farrah Caggiano. Great body of work out today. And sincerely, I want to extend all of my gratitude to all of our listeners. Whether you are here tuned in live or you're tuned into the recording, I'm truly grateful for your continued support. 100 episodes of color commentary does not happen without you. That is just a flat out truth. And I'm going to keep doing it for the collectors, the artists, the curators, the gallerists, the patrons who come through here week in and week out to hear the stories behind these incredible new bodies of work that continue to debut in our community, regardless of whether it is a bull market or a bear market. That is an important detail. Art persists, it endures, and the artists here are passionate about what they're creating. So please continue to support them. We will be here for many, many more episodes beyond 100. This is very much so just a milestone along the broader journey. So again, thank you to you. I hope you'll join us again next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be back with another legend of our space, Michael Hofka, to talk about his upcoming collection, Faces, that he's debuting with Iconic Moments. Can't wait to sit down with him. But for now, on episode 100, I've been Stephen Miller. You've been you. And this has been another episode of Color Commentary, the show where art and alpha collide. Now let's send you off right with your Tuesday reset. We'll see you guys next time.
I've been trying to make your chest move, checking for the piece with a chest move. Step through to the next room, nigga. Spread it wherever I choose, nigga. Slept through plenty class rules with a high stress, higher IQ. Don't accept dudes, hella whack shit, they ain't never come. Now it's buddy, cause they wanna impress you. Pressure makes paper, baby. Do you feel it in your